Welcome everybody to today's podcast with our special guest, Brian Hoyer. We are going to talk all about the workplace today and all the invisible stressors that most people never see that are significantly impacting your health right now. And it doesn't matter if you work in a corporate office, if you work on a factory production line, or if you have a home office. Basically, no matter where you work, I guarantee you have one and probably all of these common things that are invisible to most of us in your workplace right now that are absolutely negatively impacting your health, and most people have no idea what they actually are. We're going to get into all of that today, not only what those invisible stressors all around you are, we are going to tell you how you can mitigate those stressors so that you can have a more optimal health span while you're at work and focus on the things you're there to do without coming home from work burnt out, stressed out, and just ready to go off into la la land with a television and trying to escape from your own reality. We're going to show you how to fix your reality right here at work, because I'll tell you, I've worked in the corporate space for almost 30 years, and I've had the worst corporate office experiences that anyone could possibly imagine, which is part of the reason I created the company Primalhacker, so that we could teach people in the corporate and the home office environment how to use ancient natural practices to boost their health in really easy ways. Today's podcast, you're going to hear from Brian Hoyer, who is a worldwide expert on a lot of these things that most people have never heard of or have heard of but don't know what to do about. So I can't wait to get into this today, and I can't wait for all of you to hear what we have to say.
All right, welcome Brian to the podcast. It's such an honor to have you. We hold you in such high regard in this shielding space, and we feel so honored to have you. Would you like to share with everybody how to contact you and where to find you?
Sure, yeah, my company is Shielded Healing. You can find the website at shieldedhealing.com. And I also have another company, the Shielding Shop, which is theshieldingshop.com. And Shielded Healing is the services company where we do consulting, and the Shielding Shop is our product company.
Okay, awesome, thanks. So let's start right off the bat at corporate office. Could you go through what are these stressors that people need to look out for? Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 things or whatever. 5 stressors, main stressors.
Yeah. So basically just as you enter a building, the first thing that happens is you're blocked by the sunlight. And there's artificial light immediately in that environment. Sometimes fluorescence, but a lot of offices are switching over to LEDs. Both of them are not ideal, but fluorescents are probably worse than LEDs in many ways. So the lighting is a huge deal.
So wait. You're telling me that when I go into an office, whether it's my home or the corporate workplace, that the lights themselves are bad for me?
The lights are bad for you because they're not mimicking what nature provides for the human organism. And so basically even when you go into a shaded area, inside of a building, normally if you go in a shaded area outside in the jungle or the forest, there's still sunlight that's coming through. You're still getting those wavelengths of light. But we have solid roofs, solid ceilings, and it's completely blocking a lot of that natural light that's coming in. And also the windows and different building materials that they install into the commercial office spaces. They want it to be energy efficient. So in the windows themselves, even if you have a window, an office with a window, which is great, it's letting in a lot of natural visible light, it's still blocking out the infrared rays that are so healing to the human organism that you're normally getting all day long in the sun. Our ancestors were getting that all day long outside when we're in the sunlight or even in the shade. You're getting infrared that's bouncing up off the ground and off of the trees and everything because it's all exposed to the sun. So these windows, they actually are blocked with low E glass, which has a silver coating on it, and it's meant to make the building more energy efficient.
So even when I'm outdoors in the shade, I'm getting natural sunlight, even if I can't see the sun.
That's correct. Even on a cloudy day, you're still getting UV rays, you're still getting infrared. Maybe not as much, but you're still getting vastly more than you would ever get inside. Like fluorescent lights and LED lights are completely void of this infrared spectrum.
So what I heard, Brian, is like everyone that's listening to the podcast, before we get too much further, we are outdoors. We're actually here at our mastermind, our yearly mastermind in sunny Florida. Luckily it is sunny today. And we're outdoors in nature's light with no windows, no barriers in between us and the natural light. So we honestly take this stuff very seriously. So what I hear you saying is when I'm in a corporate or a home office work environment and I'm using artificial lights, what I've always heard is those artificial lights are designed so that we can do a task. And ultimately, if you go way back, the lights were designed so that people could run businesses and factories longer. They could not force us, but have us work longer into the night so they could make more money. So the lighting was always designed to allow us to see, to do a task, but it was never designed to work with our biology. And in fact, today's lighting, the fluorescents and the LEDs, actually harm our biology when we come inside. And even if you're sitting in front of a window, you're telling me that the window is blocking some of the healing parts of the sunlight. And what I've heard is it lets through the parts of the sunlight that can harm you if the healing parts aren't there in the right ratio.
That's correct, yeah. And it's really sad because, I test homes all over the country, and sometimes people think that their lighting is dialed in just because they have so many windows. But I've gone in there and showed them that no, you still do not have infrared. And infrared frequencies are in this optical window for the mitochondria, which is the battery of your cell that powers your cell and gives you energy. And it's completely gone by the filtering of these windows. The windows basically just filter it out for you. So what we do is we have recommendations where we recommend to reintroduce that type of light indoors. And you can do that with different types of bulbs. And so the goal is really to mimic what nature provides us. And light is just like we get energy from food. Actually, there's a really famous photobiologist overseas named Dr. Alexander Wunsch, and he did an interview with Dr. Mercola years ago where he explained to Dr. Mercola that 2/3 of the energy in your mitochondria comes from light, and only 1/3 comes from food.
Whoa, okay, that is fascinating. So we've always heard, get calories from food so you have energy. But what you're saying is this doctor from Germany is telling everyone that you can actually get energy from sunlight. I thought that was like photosynthesis.
Yeah, it kind of is. And humans have like photosynthesis for their mitochondria with their red blood cells. And so I don't know if you know anything about like the similarities between chlorophyll and red blood cells, but I've seen those two items compared, and there's actually a lot in common.
So what Brian is saying is like you could actually do human photosynthesis, like energy from sunlight. That's what we are learning in all the latest science, is we can make up to 1/3. Did you say 1/3 or 2/3?
2/3.
Up to 2/3 of your energy from sunlight. So think about, we're down here in Florida, or you might be listening to this in the summertime, and you might be thinking to yourself, I don't need to eat as much on vacation, like when I'm in Florida and I'm on the beach, or I don't get hungry as much in the summer as I do in the winter, because you're outdoors experiencing this natural light, and you can make energy. Your body isn't calling for more energy.
Yeah,
That is crazy.
And here's another thing, is that number, the 2/3 of the energy in your mitochondria is from light and only 1/3 is from food. That number is really interesting because I read a study that was published, I think in 2019. It was talking about how near infrared light not only helps your mitochondria produce energy, but it helps your mitochondria produce subcellular melatonin, which is an antioxidant that helps basically as a cooling agent for your cell to fight against free radicals, which oxidize and age your cells. And so in that article, they had this piece that was talking about how far infrared penetrates into the body. And they say that 2/3 of all the cells in your body get near infrared light penetration. And so that number directly correlates with how much energy your body gets from light. So really the only reason, it kind of made me jump to this conclusion, maybe the only reason we need food is because there's a dark area in the center of our body that's not getting that near infrared light.
Oh my gosh. That's like, I've never heard that, and I've studied light for so long. I have heard about the 2/3, but I never even thought about there's a third of your body that doesn't see the light. And that dark side of the body isn't getting the natural sunlight that could power human photosynthetically the whole body. So before I turn the mic over to Heidi for a question, I was just thinking, you brought up this point, Brian, that most people have never done this exercise. So we know that plants do photosynthesis. They make energy from the sun through chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, if you look at it molecularly, the structure of it, looks exactly like the heme protein in our bodies. What did you say the name of that protein was? Like, say chlorophyll and hemoglobin?
Yeah.
So if you just Google or whatever, use your favorite search engine and look up chlorophyll versus hemoglobin and look at the two structures, they are virtually identical, other than chlorophyll has a magnesium in the center where we have an iron in the center. That is literally just about the only difference. It's like magic.
Okay, so we've got one bullet point down. This is going to be an 8-part series. Okay, so we talked about the lighting, and some of the things I was kind of thinking about while you were talking, Brian, is like the circadian mismatch, right, from the window. So what are the colors that the window is providing, and what isn't? Like, what's missing besides infrared? Is there something else, or is there too much of one other color?
Yeah, so it's also missing UV. UV,
Okay.
Basically anything plastic blocks nearly 100% of UV. And glass can do that too, especially the low E glass. They make it to be UV resistant.
Right.
And so like all sunglasses basically 100% block all the UV. And your eyeglasses, I think, mostly have coatings on them that block UV as well. So you need that UV light, especially in the beginning part of the day, to help set your circadian rhythm so that you are able to be alert at the correct time. And blue light also has a factor in this, which blue light does come through the window. But UV and blue together in the morning, along with you also are supposed to be getting infrared at the same time. All of that helps your body to set the proper circadian rhythm. And the sun is basically communicating with us from sunrise to sunset about what time of day it is and which hormones should be released throughout the day. And if we're not connecting to that and getting into the habit of going outside, taking a break outside, if you don't take a smoke break, take a light break. Go outside into the sunlight and let your body set its circadian rhythm so that you have more energy. Because everybody takes a lunch to get energy to help finish the day, or a coffee break. But what if you started taking light breaks so that you could actually get outside? You can eat while you're outside. That's a great thing to do. It helps your body to relax when you're exposed to sunlight or outdoor, fresh air, everything. Get your feet on the ground. That's a whole other aspect. But if we're really concerned about the energy and the productivity during the day, we need to be getting light outside.
So one point you just brought up, and this is a whole podcast in and of itself that we're not going to get into, but I just wanted to mention the whole thing about coffee for energy. So, I mean, I see people at the corporate office, and I kid you not, they drink like 30 cups of coffee a day. It's just, they keep refilling it and refilling it and refilling it. And they're like, I drank 2 pots of coffee today. Well, the coffee's not even giving us energy. what it's doing is the caffeine molecule is blocking the adenosine receptors. So you're like, well, what the heck does that mean and why would I care? So when we make energy in the body, it's called ATP, but just assume like we make energy. When the energy gets used up, it has to get regenerated or rejuvenated. So it docks to this station that tells the body, you used up some energy, take a little nap or go to sleep, and we'll regenerate the energy for you. But caffeine blocks those sites. So the spent energy can't dock itself into those sites. So it makes us feel energy because the body doesn't know it's really low on energy. So you use up more energy than you should by drinking a lot of coffee. And you wake up the next day in an energy deficit. And then you need more coffee all over again. So getting sunlight just seems like an obvious solution now.
Yeah, and maybe after you have that crash with the coffee, it'd be way more important to go outside instead of refilling that cup.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm walking into the corporate office. I come inside. I'm all of a sudden blocking red and infrared from the window, some of the UV from the window. I'm getting all the blue, and then I'm under these artificial lights. So is there anything else that we should talk about for the artificial lights that's causing us some harm or some damage?
Yeah, so you also have usually your computer screen does that have a really bright blue hue to it? Oftentimes it does. And the other aspect of the screens and also the lighting is that it can flicker. Even if you don't visibly see it flickering, a lot of times it flickers. So one thing you can do with your smartphone is you can take a slow motion video of the light or of your computer screen and see if it flickers. That is something that it's pretty reliable to do the slow motion video that way and visibly see on the slow motion video if it's flickering or not. But there's also professional grade meters that you can get to measure this, and that's what we do. And sometimes if the slow motion doesn't catch it, the meter will definitely catch it. But what the flickering does is it can cause a neurological stress because your eye is constantly trying to adjust to the changes in brightness, even if it's imperceptible. And your brain doesn't necessarily keep up with the reactions that your eye is having to deal with. So your brain won't create an image, it'll just create a static image of the light just being always on because it doesn't process the information fast enough to let you know that it's flickering. But your eye, because it's so sensitive, it's constantly getting that flickering and strobing effect on your iris. And so it's contracting in different ways. And it's a situation where because your eye is connected directly to your hypothalamus and pituitary gland, it causes brain and neurological stress as well. And it can actually stress your adrenals because there's a hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis. So it makes you more tired. Your eyes, because they're contracting back and forth like so much, they can create a headache in the middle of your brain.
So one quick question on that, just to piggyback on, is that flicker from either the overhead fluorescent or LED lights or your computer screen, can that cause a migraine?
Yeah, it can cause headaches. It can absolutely cause headaches. And the fact is that one of the cures for migraine is green light. And often the green spectrum is completely missing from fluorescent lighting, as well as LED lighting. It's hardly there. I mean, you have the big blue hump with the LED lighting, and then you have it like at the very bottom, it's green. So it's not very high amount of green light at all. And so it can be really important to actually boost your green light exposure if you have migraine, or just have a little green flashlight or light bulb or something like that if you happen to have a tendency towards migraines.
Oh, that's fascinating. We've got some screaming children across the pool, so hopefully you guys can hear that. But that's what they're supposed to do, right? Like, carry on.
Yeah, play.
Well, actually, that's my next comment is about children. So thinking about like the CFL light and how detrimental it is to the eye, the brain, and how it can cause fatigue and all the things that you're saying. it seems like the appropriate thing to put in our public schools. I'm being sarcastic, but I mean, what? I mean, did they not know? They know? Like, what's your opinion on that? I'm curious. Just like, I come from a substitute teacher. You know, well, I was let go because I brought the kids outside. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
I was let go of my position because we're in a room with no windows. And I was like, you guys, and the Wi-Fi router, Brian, was right above everybody's head. It was high school, and everybody had a cell phone in their pocket. And I was like pretty sensitive. I was like, we got to get out of here. And I was teaching them about some cell phone stuff, whatever. And I'm like, let's go outside. And by the third day, they're like, you can't do that. You check them outside. Okay, anyway, but public schools, lighting, like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, there was a doctor who was a botanist, I believe, in the 60s or 70s. Thaddeus, you might know the timing of that. His name is Dr. Jonathan Ott. And he has a book called Health and Light, where he actually studied children in schools. And so this stuff has been around for like since the 70s and 80s, and they've known about it because the research has been done. But basically, in one of the studies, he had a certain type of fluorescent lighting in the room, and there was like ADHD type behavior that was happening. They changed the lighting out, and the kid that was the worst, that was having the most problems and like with distractions and not paying attention, he moved from the back row to the front row and was like basically an honor roll student after they changed the lighting. And all the students were calmer. You could see they had like one of those time-lapse videos of the kids. And in the first one, all the kids were just like moving around, wiggling and being kind of hyperactive, leaning back on their chairs and doing all kinds of things where it was obvious they weren't paying attention to what was going on in the classroom. And when they changed the lighting, the time-lapse video showed them just sitting there and basically just writing. And there wasn't nearly as much hyperactivity or chairs flying back or kids standing up and sitting down and everything like that. So
now imagine going from today's modern high schools with the uber bright LED lights, because the LEDs save money, so we all want the LED lights, with the wrong frequency, which can cause the hyperactivity in the kids and cause distress, really distress in the body and the brain, because it doesn't mimic at all the external, natural sunlight. There's a raccoon walking by us right now. It is kind of bizarre. Okay, so I'm just pointing to Brian. There's a raccoon. So there's a raccoon coming into our yard right now.
It's a baby.
And that should be interesting times as we sit here and podcast with the raccoon walking.
yeah, you should be sleeping, dude.
I know.
You're nocturnal. Do you not know this?
I told him that yesterday. He didn't listen.
Okay, so
that's so
back to the story as the raccoon wanders towards us.
His circadian rhythm's off.
His circadian rhythm is messed up because it's so light at night. And if you watch on YouTube, you might have a video of the raccoon walking. So, imagine you're in the school system and you're under this distressing immense amount of light. And then we go to our corporate jobs and they do the same thing. They flood the corporate environment with these artificial LED or fluorescent lights, and they're super bright, causing distress in the corporate worker. And as I'm there, I'm like, oh my God, I have this like anxiety and stress. I'm like, I want to get the hell out of here. And every time I go outside and go to the park and ground, when I worked in the corporate office, I felt so much better. And so as you think about that transition to like the corporate environment where it is also uber bright light shining down above us, what we noticed is in other countries, they don't necessarily do that to their workers or their school children. So for example, my older son is in 8th grade and they had foreign exchange students from Germany come to their German class for the day. They had to turn out all the lights in the classrooms of the school because the German students are used to natural lighting and they became so agitated in the American schools, they had to turn the lights out. So this is exactly what you're saying, Brian. So now we've got like, okay, the lighting could be bad, and we're going to give you some solutions here at the end. But as we walk through the corporate workplace, what other potentially invisible stressors could somebody be, bombarded with?
So we also have the wireless radiation. And so often whole buildings are using mesh networks, wireless networks that are all connected with wireless repeaters basically everywhere. There's one company that sells these cell phone booster testing equipment that we actually use to test for areas where there's not as much radiation and cell phone reception. And so the reason that they developed that product was to make sure that all areas of corporate buildings are covered with cell phone frequencies. And so often, you don't only have the wireless network in these buildings, you also have really, really high bar, like good reception cell phone networks that is put in the building on purpose, because the building itself often, with all the silver-coated low-E glass, sometimes the whole building is covered in the silver-coated low-E glass, so it's blocking out the cell phone frequencies. And so sometimes inside of these corporate buildings, they're like, oh man, we don't have any cell phone signal. Well, we've got our Wi-Fi, but we still need to be able to make calls. We don't want everybody calling on Wi-Fi calling for whatever reason that is, maybe bandwidth or whatever. And so instead of like just saying, okay, go outside to make a call, we got to bring the cell phone companies in here, and they got to install all the boosters.
More boosters.
More
Great.
boosters for
That's
everyone.
what we
Boosters for everyone. Wait. But you're telling me, so I come into the corporate office, there has to be Wi-Fi, because I have to be connected to the internet. And then there's Bluetooth, because everyone's got their AirPods in while they work, listening to their podcasts.
Yep.
And then there's all the cell phones everybody has in their pocket to make their phone calls. You're telling me that is not good for you?
Yeah, well, there's many studies, as you know, that cell phone radiation can cause many problems in the body. Okay, and probably the most pertinent one for all EMF radiation is the voltage-gated calcium ions channels that open up and let calcium flood into the cells, and it basically creates this really potent free radical inside the cells that actually can damage your mitochondria. And so that happens as voltage hits the cell. And it can be high frequency voltage, it can be 60 hertz voltage from the electrical system in the building, it can be from magnetic fields from being too close to power lines or motors running, or if there's a wiring error in the building, which that is very, very common in commercial places. There's often any large building that I go into in big cities, a lot of times they have industrial grade wiring in the building, and the whole building is a wiring error. They've just not grounded the whole building properly, or there's some sub panel that's installed improperly, and it's causing magnetic fields that go through half the building. There's a hospital down in Mexico that I tested, and that's the way that it was. And there wasn't really much that we could do about it, except work with an electrician and try to help fix a lot of the wiring errors. So you just don't know until you actually test some of these things. But the wireless radiation is so prevalent, it's something that you can't really avoid when you go into that work situation. So there are some strategies you can use to help mitigate some of the damage, and also behavior changes that you can use to mitigate some of the damage.
Is one of those not go to work?
You know, actually, I was going to say, if you're going into work every day and you don't feel good when you get to work, every time you go to work, you're like, gosh, I just feel awful, and I need all this coffee just to stay focused enough to work. I mean, it could be that it's not you, it's the environment that you're sitting in with the awful lighting and these electromagnetic frequencies. And if there's some miswiring in a business building, or a corporate type building, a commercial building, that can cause significant magnetic fields. And one aside here, Brian came to our house through Shielded Healing, and he was testing, and he found this huge magnetic field in our kitchen where we spend significant time. In fact, the magnetic field, and there was some electric current on our water pipes. And the electric current on the water pipe in combination with that magnetic field was so high that he told us, this is really dangerous, you guys. This is really high. We called Xcel Energy, who's our energy provider, and they didn't believe us, but they immediately sent, with the readings that we told them we got, they immediately sent somebody to our house and tested it themselves, and they stopped talking to us. They left the house. They came back with a truck, pulled the wiring from the actual like overhead wires out of our house and rewired our house. So like they found that they made an error in our home wiring to such an extent that they immediately like got people together that minute and fixed our wiring. It was crazy. I've never seen them respond that fast.
Yeah, and it's like when you have current that was that high on a pipe, it's concerning to them. And they realize that, you know what, we have it's probably a neutral to ground fault is what they tested. Because when there's a lot of current going through water pipes, I mean, water pipes are not rated to have like electrical current going through them. And so that's like a fire hazard. That's obviously a safety hazard. If for whatever reason there was like it was energized, like somebody could actually get electrocuted or something could possibly happen.
Do you see that often, or is that like an anomaly, or is that?
It's very common, but I think in your situation it was even more of an issue just because of them needing to come and actually fix something like that. Often what it will be is the ground wire is connected to the metal pipes in a house, and in many places they don't do that anymore because it does create issues with the electrical system. But it's very common in homes that are like 20 years old or older.
Oh, I was just going to say, this house was built in 1915, so I was curious if that was part of the problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Older wiring. So in some cases though, when you have a home office, you can probably fix that. But when you work in the corporate office or a commercial building, you may not, especially if you're like a peon or something. I'm not like the leadership and I can just tell some electrician to come in and fix it. I'm kind of stuck with what I've got to work with in the corporate office.
Yeah.
So I do want to encourage everyone to stick around towards the end where we give you solutions to all of these things. It's not doom and gloom. This is the whole reason that Brian exists in this world, is to teach us how to mitigate all these things, to protect ourselves and to live a more optimal life.
I think he exists for other reasons, but thank you for your knowledge.
Well, that's why my businesses exist.
If
It's
Brian
the
wasn't
whole reason he exists.
if Brian wasn't here, these things would not be getting done. Brian is like at the forefront of bringing these to everyone. This is like in my mind one of the reasons that Brian Hoyer exists.
Did you see the look on his face? He's like, really? Like, that's it? I mean, it's big. It's a big one.
So is there anything else on the electromagnetic frequency realm at the corporate or home office that we haven't covered before we move on?
Yeah, so there's electric fields, and this is something that you may have more control over, is that most of the power strips and power cables and electrical wires that are at your desk, because they're so close to you, they're going to be raising what's called your body voltage. And you can test body voltage with a tool that electricians use called a multimeter. And you basically ground the meter through the COM port, and then you use the other lead, and you hold the other lead, and then you can see what your AC body voltage is. And AC is just the pulsed type of electricity that all of your electronics run on. And so when you touch that, you'll see like that your body voltage goes up. And if you take your other hand that's not touching the test lead and start to put it near the wall or towards cables and things that are plugged in, you'll see that it goes up even higher. And what that's doing is that's oscillating your cells 120 times per second. And every time that happens, there's like micro contractions that happen on a cellular level. And that can deplete you of minerals and nutrients and all sorts of things. So like when a muscle contracts, it takes calcium, it uses up calcium to contract. And magnesium is used up to relax that muscle again. So every contraction, 120 times per second, you're using up calcium to contract and magnesium to relax. And I think that this is actually a huge epidemic of depletion of these minerals. And it's probably one of the reasons why mineral depletion is happening so much in the body. We're magnesium deficient, we're calcium deficient, they're deficient in all kinds of different minerals because not only is the food devoid of it because of the soils being depleted, but our bodies are constantly using it up because of the electromagnetic stress that induces this reaction where we're actually just using up energy for no reason.
Whoa, so not only do I really dislike all those cords at my desk to connect everything that are always in the way that I'm trying to like move off my desk, but they're actually bad for me. Like they're creating an electric field, is that it? It's an electric field from those cords?
Yeah, an electric field.
And so that's like an invisible field. And how far, Brian? So like there's a cord, well there's like tons of cords because I have a standing desk. So there's a cord through my desk to make it sit stand. There are cords all behind it for my monitors, for my laptop, my docking station, my mouse, like all that stuff, right? So I've got all these cords around me to power all my shit at my desk. And then those cords, they give off an invisible electric field. Like how far does that field go?
Well, it kind of depends because if you have metal on your desk or if your desk is made of metal and that metal is not grounded, it's going to use that as a conduit to come closer to your body and then come onto you. So the electric fields are kind of, I don't want to say like a virus, but they spread out over any conductive material. And most materials have some conductivity in them. So on a desk, like even drywall has conductivity, even like wood has some conductivity because minerals, especially metallic-based minerals, have conductivity in them, and moisture, water has conductivity. So like if your desk has cords on it, the whole desk is gonna be energized in some way. And you can detect it like as much as 6 inches coming out from your desk, just from the desk having a cable on it. And
so how far, like 6 inches?
6 inches from a desk that has a plugged-in power cable on it. For a power cable itself, it's going to come out about 3 feet.
3 feet.
Yeah.
Wow. Now does, if I'm standing like, let's just say the power cable goes under my feet. So I've got my chair, the power cable goes through where my chair is, and I'm like putting my foot on it. That's pretty close. So if I like move that cord back a little bit, like am I safer 2 feet away or 1 foot away than I am standing on it?
Definitely. And standing on it, I'll give an example that's fairly believable, even though I don't have real numbers here. But I've tested this enough times that I can give a pretty accurate example. So if you're standing on a power cable, your body's going to be probably all the way up to about 10 to 12 volts. If you move it about 6 inches away, you're probably going to go down to like 2 volts. If you move it 3 feet away, and there's no other sources of electricity around you, then you're going to go down to about maybe 50 millivolts.
So it's like a 5x reduction just moving it a few inches away. So this is really what I want to convey is like when we get into the solutions, and we'll let Brian talk about like why does he know all this stuff? What does Brian do in the world that's so amazing? And then we can talk about because he has done everything that he's doing with him and his team, you'll find out what you can do at your workplace and also at your home office to protect yourself. And so literally just moving that cord a little bit away from you, it really does make a massive difference, like 5 times less radiation by moving it a few inches. That's huge, and most people have no idea that, like, oh, I'm so afraid of electromagnetic frequencies, and now I'm standing right by this cord. But if you just move it a little bit, that can really make a difference.
Yeah, it can make a huge difference. And there are other factors, like if the cord is going over something else that's semiconductive, then, and you're touching that semiconductive thing, then that can raise your body voltage, up like a few volts as well. And really the target for a daytime work office is under 100 millivolts. That's what you want to be at. So you can test that and you can try to get under that, but a very basic guideline would be like you have to measure it. You have to measure it, otherwise you don't know where you're at.
And each one is different. Like there's no, like you can't say it's typically this range, and you can make assumptions.
Yeah, you can make assumptions that it's gonna be too high, if you don't have any solutions in place for it. And in general, I mean, just like Thaddeus was saying, moving those cables away, it's going to help, but it's not going to get you in that sweet spot range where you're going to feel like you're really going to be productive.
Okay. Is it, I mean, would it be helpful if everybody got a body voltage meter? Are they too expensive, or is that something?
Yeah, you can get them at any hardware store. You can get a multimeter and use it as a body voltage meter.
So Brian has like a really expensive high-end body voltage meter, but I went out and bought one for $35 on Amazon. So I think like you can get them for $10 or $15, a multimeter, and you can look up a multimeter, and you can go on YouTube and find out how to use a multimeter to measure body voltage. And so that's what I went out and bought, and it was really inexpensive off Amazon. I don't know that everybody needs one. What I would recommend is like find someone that has one and borrow it and use it in your work environment or where you spend the most time, which we'll talk about in a minute, so you can determine where you're at. But you don't have to necessarily buy one.
Yeah, and if you know of someone who's an electrician, they have one. They have multiple ones. They probably have one they're not using that they would let you borrow, and they wouldn't care if you returned it.
So I want to start telling people about what you do, Brian, and then how to protect themselves at their home or their corporate office. And I know there are, so don't think that these are all the stressors, right? Because we could have a whole podcast on water, and you're drinking the fluoride at work, and you're drinking the BPA and the PFAS in your coffee cups at work, and you've got food at work. So there are other stresses, including toxins just from the building materials themselves. So I have spent almost 20 years in the office building space, keeping toxic chemicals out of the office environment. So I'm really familiar with the chemicals in an office environment. So even though Brian is quite expert on all those things as well, I want us to shift, Brian, to telling people what you do with Shielded Healing and the Shielded Shop, and then let's talk through some of the solutions that people can utilize right now in their home or corporate office.
Sure. So basically with Shielded Healing, my team and I, we travel all around the United States. We've been to Canada and Mexico as well, and probably open to traveling a little bit. We may be in the future doing some tours to some other countries overseas and things like that. But we go into homes and also to commercial spaces. We tested many corporate places as well, and we test for 6 different types of EMF stressors. And it's a lot of the things that we've talked about so far: electric fields, wireless radiation, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, artificial light. And then we also test geopathic stress, which is energy that comes up from the earth. And that's something that has been around forever. But in a lot of the corporate spaces, we're mainly focusing on the man-made frequencies and not so much on the earth radiation that's coming up. Unless we've got a specific person that's hired us and they're like, there's something wrong about my desk area. And then we'll go there and we'll actually test everything for them. And with the energy coming up from the earth, sometimes usually it's as simple as moving their desk like a few feet over so they're not in like a geopathically stressed hot zone. But yeah, we're testing all of these different stressors, and then we build a protocol for optimizing that space, and then we've sourced products from all over the world and tested them, and we basically build this protocol and have recommendations, and we also help people prioritize. Okay, what's the biggest bang for my buck? How do I make the biggest impact on my health and my life and my family's life, as far as like the joy we're experiencing from day to day, like how do we thrive, that sort of thing. And we're helping their contractors, or if they want to DIY it, we can help them do that. But we're guiding people through the process with step by step.
So basically you do an assessment, you tell people what's going on in their space that could be stressing them, and then you give a full list of recommendations. So if somebody, Brian, wanted to have that done in their space, right? Like they're living in Alabama, they're living in California, how do they set up one of these assessments for their business or their home?
So if they just go on our website, shieldedhealing.com, and click on EMF testing, we have a list of all the states that we're currently scheduling for. And if you do not see your area on that list, you can go to the contact page and then just type in your name and give us your information and request that we come to your area, and we'll put you on a list for that area. And then when we get enough people who are interested in that area, we schedule a tour there. We call them EMF tours.
Perfect. And Brian's been to our house multiple times, so I used to have a rental house, so we did the rental house, then we used to have our personal residence, and pretty much everybody we know has had Brian come to his house, and people you've heard of that are pretty famous or really famous, Brian's probably been there too. So he really does get around. He really is one of the leading experts, if not the leading expert for sure, in the United States at what he does and the full package that Brian puts together. And it has been so helpful. Like one of the things you taught us, Brian, was to, if you're going to spend money in your home, and we're going to talk about this in hour 2 behind the membership, it's like figuring out where you spend the most time. And for us, sleeping, so like creating this primal sleeping environment, which we can talk about in hour 2, made a massive difference just in stress levels and sleep quality. So what I want to do is walk through the 3 things that we talked about earlier and how to protect ourselves. So number 1, walking into the corporate space is lighting. So like I can't go and change the fluorescent bulbs above me that are giving me migraines. And yes, I've worked with women at the corporate headquarters that get migraines every time they come to work. So I started coaching them, like, why don't you go to the cafeteria and work? Because there's Wi-Fi, but there's no lights on in the cafeteria. There's so many windows. So even though the window blocks some frequencies, they're getting natural light, and there's no overhead LEDs and fluorescents causing the migraine. And guess what? It worked for them. They were able to work from that cafeteria, even though it's not as comfortable as like a really nice Herman Miller desk chair. But they didn't get the migraine. And in the summer, me personally, I will work in the cafeteria outdoors. We have outdoor outdoor tables to eat at the cafeteria. I'll work from there, so I'm in the natural light. But what can people do if they're coming in, they have to be at their desk or whatever? What are the strategies you give them?
So I'll start with one of the things you can do for free is you can start scheduling times where even if you get out for 5 minutes, go outside for 5 minutes. If you're allowed to take a break, do that and expose as much skin as you can to the sun during that 5 minutes. It could be 10 minutes, even better. But if it's like you get there in the morning, hopefully before you go to work to start, you've already been outside and put your bare feet on the ground and watch the sunrise or spend at least about 10 to 20 minutes outside. That's ideal to kind of give yourself the most productivity for the day. And then after like maybe 2 hours of work, if you can take a bathroom break and then go outside for a little bit, if there's an area outside where you can do that at your work, do that. So I would say about every 2 hours you can do that. That's going to help you reconnect with nature, with the sun.
Are you telling people to go to the bathroom outside at work?
Sure. If there's a corner or someone's car that you don't like.
That'd be really great for the women.
So, if you could, that would be ideal, rather than going to the fluorescent bathroom with no windows and all the chemicals they probably use. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, we as Americans and Europeans probably used to take a lot of smoke breaks, and even if you didn't smoke, somebody was leaving the office to go outside for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and smoke a cigarette. They were probably healthier than we were. Like, we don't realize this. It's like, how come Jim smoked cigarettes his whole life and he's still alive at 70 and in good health? Like, he was probably outside a lot more than the person who didn't smoke. And we're like, wait a minute, I thought smoking was bad. It probably is. Just take a light break.
Yeah.
Okay, what else can people do? So go outside at every opportunity you can get, because sunlight is quantum. And most people don't understand this. And quantum, and it's like very simplest, just means like a little bit goes a really long way. So going outside even for 1 or 2 minutes makes a massive difference in your health and not getting outside.
Yeah, and just think about like how it is. Like, I don't know if you've ever gone to a movie in the middle of the day or in the morning, and then you come outside, immediately you're like, you feel like you're a vampire or something, like, it's gonna kill me. But like, that's kind of like what it's like in the corporate world. It's like you're under all this artificial light, and then all of a sudden you get the real thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, this life is so much brighter, it's so much joyful, so much more joyful and colorful. And really the color is also a part of like what's being dampened indoors. Have you ever noticed that there's so many vivid colors that you see outside in nature versus when you're in the office space, it's just kind of all filtered and almost like dull.
We call that mauve or greige in
Yeah.
the industry.
Yeah. And so like getting even vibrant colors, and if there's a garden where you work, go take a stroll in the garden and look at all the vibrant colors. That's gonna like boost the mood of your brain, because there's this thing called color therapy where it will elicit different responses in your brain and different emotions in your brain when you look at color. And one of those colors that's the most beneficial for you is the color of the sun. What's the color of the sun?
All colors.
Well, it is all colors, but what's the color that we see and
Yellow.
think of when yellow. Okay, so yellow light is incredible for the brain. It boosts your mood. That's why people love sunny days. Like, you get a lot of benefit from being outside when it's cloudy, but when it's sunny, you feel happy. And that's because your brain is tuned into this frequency of the sunlight. It wants you to get outside when it's sunny because it does make you happy. It's like this big mood booster. And so what I've done in my company is I've designed a lamp called the Jovial lamp. And it is attuned to 588 nanometers. And it is a halogen lamp that's 150 watts. And it has all the red and near infrared wavelengths. And it's tuned to that 588 nanometer yellow light. And that is a mood booster. And studies have shown that it also increases focus and productivity. So it makes you happy and more productive. Why wouldn't you want that in your workspace?
So that's something you could purchase, and it's like a standalone desk lamp, like a portable lamp, right? So you can bring that to your workspace to have something that doesn't flicker, that has the warmer frequencies closer to your body to tune yourself into that versus the overhead lights.
That's right. And it also can be clamped to the desk, or it can have a base on it. And it comes with both options.
So I wanted to also point out to people that this is why Brian is so smart and so intelligent in the way that you design your products, Brian, because the other thing that I've noticed from the sun, so I used to have one of these really expensive spectrometers. I know you have one, Brian. And I would test the wavelengths and the frequencies coming from the sun during the day. When we're indoors, the frequency, the intensity, and the wavelengths of the light, they never change. We're using the same colors at the same intensity every day, all day long. But outside in nature, from sunrise to sunset, and from spring to fall to summer to winter, the amount of each color from the sun and the intensity of it changes, both throughout the day and throughout the year. And that feeds us information that keeps us optimally healthy during each time of the year, except that we keep ourselves indoors under static lighting that never changes. So I love what you're doing.
So I'm just going to piggyback off that. So a lot of people in the northern climate where we're from, they use that sad light. So it sounds like this is kind of like a newer version, or a better version, obviously, the Jovial light, where people could like put a lamp in their office or on their desk or plant it or whatever, and have these different frequencies, which we now know, because the sad light was just blue and white light, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's mainly the intensity of the light, the lux. The sad lamps all the studies studied about 10,000 lux. And that's what they showed like needed to be emitted towards your face. And you have to get pretty close to those sad lamps. And there's like a certain amount of time, I think maybe 5 or 10 minutes that you do it in the morning to help prevent seasonal affective disorder. But this lamp can be used for that, but it's meant to be used as a staple source of light at your desk while you're working. You can turn it off when you go on a break or whatever, but as soon as you come back, you turn it back on, because what it's meant to do is give you the color of the sun, that 588 nanometer hue, but also it's providing the red and near-infrared wavelengths that are missing from your office environment and your indoor environment. And so it's also important, like to Thaddeus's point, that the sun is always changing throughout the day. That's why it's a good thing, even if you have this lamp, to still take your sun breaks. It's not a replacement for taking your sun breaks. You need to take your sun breaks and use the lamp, because the lamp's providing this staple near-infrared energy that you should be getting all day long when you're outside. And the near-infrared really, I don't know if you experience this, but the near-infrared spectrum actually is pretty consistent throughout the day. What changes a lot is the visible spectrum and maybe the UV as well. Because of the wavelengths are shorter in the UV and visible spectrum, but they're longer in the red and the near-infrared spectrum. So the longer wavelengths penetrate easier through the atmosphere and the clouds, and so they're pretty consistent during the day, whereas the visible spectrum changes. That's why the sun changes color as it rises and as it sets, because there's different frequencies of light that are getting through or not getting through.
Awesome. So we've got some lighting solutions that we can do, and there's so much more we could talk about with light. But
by the way, with that light, it's also fully shielded and grounded from electric fields too. So it's not going to contribute to your electric field voltage.
I was actually just going to ask you that, and I was also thinking when you were talking about the jovial light, it seems like a light supplement, right? Like, so if you think about like people that are not eating a whole food diet, they supplement with whatever vitamins and whatever. So like this is a light supplement. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's exactly like what it is.
Super cool. One other thing, as we are going to wrap up hour one, or do you have more?
yeah, I wanted to go through what people can do with their desk cords, and then a real quick strategy on EMF protection before we go to hour two. So let's talk about desk cords. So all those desk cords that are providing power to all our devices, is there some strategy when I'm at work? Is there something I can do about that?
Yeah, so with the shielding shop, what we've done is our mission is to be technology that respects your biology. And so we are basically redesigning all the device, like a lot of the devices and the cables especially, that go inside of an office to shielded versions of them. So we have a lot of power cables that are shielded, extension cords that are shielded, surge protectors that are shielded. And basically, if you want a healthy office space, you need to replace all your current cable setups with the ones that we have on the website. And so you can have a shielded power strip, and that takes care of, like most people have a power strip at their desk. And then there's cables that you can plug into your computer monitor that most of them, all of them, that they come from the manufacturer, they're not shielded, so they're contributing to your electric field exposure. And there's different ends on those, and we kind of explain that on the website, like which ends you have. There's some that look like three circles together. We call those Mickey Mouse plugs. The technical name is C5, and then C7 is a different one, and then we have the C13 cables, which is the typical power cable that's plugged into the back of a computer monitor.
Okay, so I mean, we're at work, let's say 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, some of us. And so we're repeatedly exposed to long periods of time with these electric fields. So what you're saying is you've got shielded cables. So if they're these cables that, like, they're not giving off the electric field. Is that what's happening?
That's right, because they have a shield inside of them, like a sheath that goes around the electrical cables, and that sheath is conductive and grounded to the electrical ground. And so it's blocking all of those electric fields from coming out onto your body. And then another thing that a lot of people do at their desk at work is they charge their phone. And so often you'll have your own phone charger that you plug in. Well, we have a product that's like a desktop power dock, and the cable's shielded, and the whole block is shielded except for in the front where you have the electrical outlets. But on that device, on that product, we also have these USB ports. We have 2 USB ports and 1 USB-C port. And most of those kinds of ports are not grounded, but ours are. So as soon as your USB, the metal part of the USB cable, that's your charging cable, plugs into our Safe Charge desktop power dock, it's grounded. And you can charge on that without having any extra electric field stress on your body.
I've got a USB charger sitting on top of my desk, and my desk is at a standing height, so it's right by my head. Then I've got my 2 monitors right by my head. My laptop is docked in a docking station on top of my desk by my head. And then all the cords are running behind and through the middle of my desk to allow the desk to stand. And then I'm standing on the floor with all those cords kind of around me. So like I need some of those tools because I'm just
visiting the shielding shop.
I'm just thinking about like, oh my God. I'm pulled away from the wall. I'm in front of all these bright windows. I have 5 windows in front of me at my desk because I designed my workplace consciously because I knew what I wanted. And I'm like, I did all this right. I'm like 3 feet away from the wall and so I'm away from the electric fields. And then I just put all of them into my face right on top of my desk.
You were doing the best you knew how to do.
Yeah.
Brian, you're giving me just the tools I need. This is insane. Okay, so you're saying I can't, well, let's not go there. I'm not going to go with the aluminum foil wrapping my desk cords because that's probably a bad idea and they're not grounded. That's going to make things really
Look at
bad.
his face, he's like, what?
Don't do that. All right, so what about like...
Consult an electrician before proceeding forward.
Now I'm thinking like, okay, so there's some of the basics, but the main one, the invisible one, I can't see it, hear it, smell it, feel it, taste it, touch it, right? The microwave field. So when you're in microwave, I'm like, I don't sit by the microwave oven, but you might sit by the Wi-Fi router, or you might have Wi-Fi enabled on your laptop, on your phone, and your cell phone turned on, and your Bluetooth AirPods in your ears. What can we do at work that could be really simple, that someone working in a corporate office can do to just minimize the amount of microwave damage that their body is taking on?
So probably the closest microwave radiation that you have at your desk is your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth on your cell phone, as well as the mobile network on your cell phone. So if you don't need to have your cell phone on while you're working, keep it on airplane mode with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth turned off, and have that at your desk. And there are, like, if you need to be available for your family just in case of an emergency or something, if your work allows you to install something like a messaging app, you can install Signal or Telegram or Skype on your computer at work, and that could be your emergency work number for your family. So a lot of people are concerned about that. Now, depending on the office, if you have a wired connection going to your desk, you can also turn Wi-Fi off on your computer, because that's going to be emitting a signal trying to connect to the Wi-Fi network. And then some other things you can do is get a wired keyboard and a wired mouse. And those are both sources of wireless radiation at your desk. So those are all the things that you can really control right there at your desk. And that's super important. The rest of the office, you may not be able to have much control over, but there are some solutions that you can do to help mitigate the damage that you're inevitably going to be exposed to during your time at work.
Would you recommend standing on a grounding mat or putting one under your hands, like on your keyboard, under your keyboard?
Yeah, once you have the electric fields in your body voltage down below 100 millivolts at your workspace, then it's safe. It's much safer to use a grounding mat in that way.
One of the other things that you mentioned on your laptop, so most people, not everybody at work, but most people have access to a landline. So like one of those cables you plug into the back of your laptop and the internet comes into it. So once you're connected, like you said, Brian, like turn your Wi-Fi off. Most people are connected to a landline or a docking station that's connected to a landline, which gives you all the internet to your computer, and they keep their Wi-Fi on, and they keep their Bluetooth on their laptop. And maybe you are listening to this and you're like, I didn't know my laptop had Bluetooth. like everyone's laptop has Bluetooth, and I find it rare to meet somebody that has a corporate laptop that's ever used the Bluetooth on it, but it's always turned on. So turn that shit off, but get it on.
Yeah. Another thing is if you do take phone calls on your phone and you use wireless headphones, then it's way better to get wired headphones for those calls. You're going to have a lot less radiation, and then also when you're taking the call, place the phone as far away from your body as possible so that your headphones are actually using the full extension of what they are. Especially if you're taking the call at your desk. Just get that phone as far away from you as possible and extend those wired headphones as far as they go.
Okay, so I meet a lot of people who are addicted or so protective of their AirPods. It's kind of insane. And they're like, I'm not giving that up. Like, I will not get rid of them, blah, blah. Like, could you scare them a little bit? No, I'm like, don't fear anything. No. But honestly, like, what's the most like detrimental thing that you're doing? Like, you're microwaving your brain cells, right? I mean, just like, because you are an authority, and so Scotty is on this subject, and you know, like, I tell people that, and they're like, I don't know if I believe that, right? Can you just do a little horror story?
Well, I had one CEO that I had consulted with, and he continually was on the phone on his AirPods all the time. That's how he takes his calls. And he started getting headaches. And I said, you gotta get rid of the AirPods. And finally he did, and he stopped getting headaches. And so you also have to think about this from a standpoint of, look, like, do I care more about having my AirPods and being this trendy look of this, I'm the business guy that travels around and I've got AirPods in my ears and I'm ordering a latte at Starbucks. Like, do you want to be that guy, really? Seriously? No, nobody wants to be that guy. People look at that guy and they're like, eh. And I think, I don't know, maybe Heidi, you can tell me, but for women, they don't really look at that guy and think, oh, that's cool. Like, that's so. But the point is that your health is way more important, and the functioning of your brain is way, way more important than having the convenience of the AirPods in your ears, because your brain is what you have. Especially if you're a CEO or somebody who really, you know, your job requires you to think strategically and deeply and to be able to brainstorm things. And if you have brain fog and you're getting headaches, you're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to be able to think as clearly. It's bad. And even more mainstream scientists like Andrew Huberman, who is a doctor that has a podcast. And where was he educated? I think it was
PhD.
Stanford.
Yeah, he was educated at Stanford, and he's saying, like, I don't use them anymore. I looked at the research. I am not using those, like, ever again.
So we're going to have to wrap up for hour one. So at hour two, we're going to tell you where to find some of these studies where you can just literally put it into your favorite search engine and find out what the U.S. government, our own U.S. government, has already studied and already concluded about these types of devices. We're also going to talk about how you can track a way to reduce the majority of your exposure. So Brian's going to give you a really good tip on how to reduce your exposure with a really simple technique he uses with all his clients. And we're going to go into a little bit more beyond the veil that you won't hear in hour one. So before we go to hour two, let me ask Heidi if she has any last questions, and we really want one more time, Brian, to hear where people can find you after I pass this over to Heidi.
Okay, so I say this after Thaddeus gives any talk on EMF, and I will continue to say this, like, from a very yin, nurturing perspective of, like, it's worse to stress out about all this stuff too. So let's just have that fear conversation in, like, you know, like a minute. You guys don't freak out about this. I know I was like, tell the horror stories of the AirPods, but I mean, that's just like, you know, not sensationalizing, but it's like, this is your brain, your mind, like, controls everything. Like, what are you doing, right? But honestly, like, the more you stress out about this stuff, the worse it is, right? So let's use this information to protect us, protect our children, protect our future, but let's just relax into it. So like, going into hour 2, like, take a deep breath, get a glass of water, and relax, you know, maybe 3 breaths.
All right, so why don't you,
Come tell us where you
yep, so
We'll cut that out. Okay.
reiterate that question for him before he tells us where to find him. Did you have a question for him? Okay, no further questions, moving on. Thaddeus, wrap it up. All right, Brian, one more time, where can people find you and get a hold of you if they want their home assessed or to ask you for some consulting on their own issues, workplace, whatever it be?
Right, you can find us at shieldedhealing.com and click on EMF testing, and you'll be able to see all the areas where we are currently offering our services. And if you don't find us there, or find your location there, you can click on the Contact Us and fill it out and let us know where you're at and request a visit. And then you can also visit us at theshieldingshop.com and see all the products that we offer. And also, I wanted to mention that I also teach a course with a business partner, Nick Pinot, and it's called the Electropollution Fix. So if you go to the electropollutionfix.com, you'll find that, and we basically take people through all these modules, step-by-step process on how to reduce your EMF exposures in your home, mainly, but also we have travel tips and some things like that as well.
Awesome. So check out the Electro Pollution Fix, Shielding Shop, and shieldedhealing.com to get a hold of Brian. And Brian, it was awesome talking to you today. Can't wait for hour 2.
All right, I'm ready.
All right, join us for hour 2 behind the membership. If you want to sign up for the membership, do that, and you get all the full 2-hour videos and podcasts with everything we talk about that we can't always say in the public. All right, let's take a quick bio break.